Hey everyone, my name's Josh from the channel Josh Richens Producer here on YouTube, but today I'm at WeissAdvice. Make sure you check out the website, WeissAdvice.com. Now, Matt and I have both done videos in the past on breaking rules, whether it be low end or anything else. And if we're just out here breaking rules left, right, and center, then it kind of begs the question, why are we breaking them if they really are rules? And if we're allowed to break them, then why are they even rules in the first place? Well, I have a song that I recorded that wasn't so typical, and I kind of broke a few rules along the way. And I wanted to show you some of the reasons why I chose to do that, and when and how you might want to choose to do the same thing. So I'm going to show you a little bit of this song. The song is called It's All Good. It's by Harry Carmen, and I'm going to play you a little bit of the chorus now.
Don't you look over your head. Everything will be alright, I swear, it's all good, true. It's all good, honey, sweet. If you're all good, then I'm all good. If you're down, just wait and see. It'll be all good, honey, sweet. 'Cause you're good for me.
You might think that everything that I've just said is a little bit silly, and that the answer is obvious, that there's common practices, and in certain situations, it's okay to break them. Well, what situations? I think that's an impossible question to answer, because music isn't objective in that way. It's all about the creativity. And so I like to break rules if it affords you a kind of creativity that you wouldn't have otherwise had. Let me show you what I mean. When Harry wrote this song, he did a demo, and he sent that demo to me, and then I did a demo before the version that I've just shown you. And that sounded like this. Exact same part of the song. Now, obviously that version doesn't have vocals, but obviously it's also a lot cleaner, it's a lot safer, and I've typically followed a lot more rules. So why did I choose to take it the way that I took it? Well, for the sake of creativity. Does that mean I'm saying forget rules because it's creative? Well, yes. And no. Think of it this way. Let's take an example like pop punk. There are a whole bunch of standards and common practices within pop punk. Things like hard-hitting rock drum sounds, distorted guitars, compressed vocals even. The list goes on. And the more that you stray away from those common practices and those conventions, you're very quickly going to realize that what you're making isn't quite pop punk. Now, of course, there are pop punk songs that are acoustic, but even those have their own conventions that make them what they are. So then following rules is good, right? Well, only to a certain degree. If we all used the same drum sounds and the same distorted guitar tones and did the same melodies, we'd all just be making the same music. And so there'd be no creativity within that. And so by that logic, creativity is when and where we break the rules. This all makes me think of a drummer called Grayson Neckrutman. I hope I'm saying that right. Anyway, Grayson is one of the best drummers alive, and I once heard him say that at a certain point, he forgot about techniques and started just doing what worked for him. Now, I have seen people online take this quote to literally mean techniques don't matter. But I don't think that's what Grayson is saying. In fact, I think it's the opposite. Like I said, Grayson is one of the best drummers alive. He spent years learning the techniques that he advocates forgetting. Those techniques are built into his muscle memory, and it's comfortable to live in a technically sound environment when he's drumming. And so if he is going to do something different, he has to have a reason to leave that comfort zone. So whenever Grayson is breaking rules or forgetting his technique, it's creatively motivated. This is something that I've observed in a lot of people who are really good at what they do. They're able to take something that's rigid and defined and push the boundaries of it until it fits a new definition. And that's a lot harder to do if you don't have the technical foundation that allows you to do it. Think of it this way. If somebody's really good at drums, are they likely to be playing all of the same things that every other drummer is playing? No, they're much more likely to be playing something different and creative. But here's the cool part about all of this. You don't have to be the best in the world to be able to use this type of creativity. You just have to be aware of what you're doing. Are you doing something because it affords you a type of creativity that you wouldn't otherwise have? Or did you hear Grayson the Crutman say that technique doesn't matter, so you used it as an excuse to stop practicing? The last point that I want to make about this is that my favorite music and my favorite mixes and productions are bold. They take something and they do it wrong on purpose, or they take something and they push it too far because they like it that way, and then they ask themselves, what does it take to make this work? And I love that kind of creativity. I think that it's really, really cool and really kind of like boundary pushing type of creativity that gives us all of these new worlds and flavors that we wouldn't have otherwise had in the past. And that's why when you hear people say that everything has been done in music before, they're just flat out wrong. Like, we don't even use all of the notes in between the 12 that we do use. There's so much left to do. So much left to do. So I really hate that point of view when someone's like, oh, music, eventually everyone's just going to have done all the same things and it's all going to sound the same. And then the same person goes onto like a microtonal guitar video and they're like, it sounds out of tune. Sorry about that. I think I let some of my own personal stuff come out there. Anyway, that all might be a little bit facetious and kind of philosophical. So why don't I show you a few things that I think are going to give you a hard and fast example of when I in particular have been creative in this way, where I've forgotten typical rules and conventions for the sake of creativity. Right, so I showed you this first demo before. Let me play a little bit more of it here at the start. So Harry and I recorded this song, and we initially had troubles putting his vocals onto this version that I had done. So we decided that we wanted to take it down half a step, and that's kind of what kicked off this whole endeavor. Is I now knew that either I had to rebuild the project that I had, taking things down half a step, either pitch shifting them or re-recording them, or just start from fresh. And I kind of wanted to just start from fresh because I didn't feel like taking this song down half a step was going to fix all of my problems, and I wanted the mood to match the song. Now, there were two references that I had while doing this. The first one was Many Times by Dion. I love the live in the room sound of that record, and if you didn't realize, I just did 3 breakdowns of it. So Dion's Many Times was one really strong reference, and the other one was a song called Clairvoyant by a pop punk band called The Story So Far. If you check out that second one, I think you'll see where we were going with the vocals and where we ended up. And where we ended up was that our vocals were very, very roomy. So this is the original vocal track with no processing.
Yeah. Everything will be alright, I swear, it's all good, sugar. It's all good.
We decided to record vocals and guitar at the same time in the one microphone. Not the most conventional, and certainly not how it would have worked in that other demo that I showed you, but it affords me the creativity that I wouldn't have otherwise had in that song, where this feels really live and in the room and real. And I think one of the main parts about that is actually the way that this song ends is kind of the thing that sold us on this take. When we originally did this take, we weren't certain that we were going to use it as our final take. We were kind of just testing things out and seeing what the roomy tone would sound like. And at the end of the take, the click track bleeds out of my drum headphones over there and into the microphones. And then you hear me hit the space bar as the song stops. And we both really liked that because it gave it a sense of realness, like it was just in the room being recorded. Let me show you.
'Cause you're good for me.
Right, so I think it would be fair to say don't pick up your click track in your headphone bleed is a pretty hard and fast rule. But we really liked it. It afforded us a creativity that we wouldn't have otherwise had. I'm going to turn some of this stuff on now, and the one thing I do want to show you is Metatune. That's right, I have auto-tune on this track with both guitar and vocals. I think that's probably against the rules. And in fact, we can see why it's against the rules. Because if I engage this and I come back to the start where this guitar is, you can hear it's grabbing weird notes and it's bending them all over the place. And actually the reason it's doing that is because it's set to B major and there's an accidental in the guitar part. So the tuner is actually doing a surprisingly good job of trying to grab that note and pull it towards one of these two notes that it does think is actually in the key of B major. And you know what? I like the sound. It affords me a creativity that I wouldn't have otherwise had. I'm probably going to say that at least once or twice more before the video ends too, by the way. These last two plugins are actually kind of funny, and again, show what I was talking about. It's a little bit of reverb and a little bit of compression on the vocal, where I otherwise haven't really used any compression on this vocal, and they're turned off because I didn't like them. These are very normal, typical things, common practices you could call them, that you could do to a vocal, even if there is a guitar in the track. But it took away from the rawness and the realness that this track was providing, and so I ended up turning these two off. Now, this guitar track served as the bed for everything else that I wanted to put in there. So that lead that we heard at the intro of the previous demo was really dry and it was really clear and in your face, a very typical guitar sound and a nice one too. I was happy with that lead sound. And this is where the lead actually ended up in the final version. Super cool and roomy. I've heard people tell you don't put reverbs on the individual tracks, always use a bus. That's a nice rule that gets thrown around a lot, and another one that I love breaking. And in fact, not only have I broken it, but my reverb is at 100% wet for this guitar part, because I like the way that it married it to the track. I didn't have anything else that was doing that, and so while this isn't a typical thing to do, it's not common practice, it worked for the track. And another way that I think this kind of creativity manifests itself is happy accidents. When you do something kind of wrong and it turns out really cool. As Bob Ross would say, there are no mistakes, only happy accidents. Now, I want to finish this video with what was probably one of my favorite happy accidents of all time. And it serves as a really good example for another point where best practices weren't followed, but it afforded us a creativity that we wouldn't have had otherwise. That's going to be the last time I say it, I promise. And what happened was we recorded a double for the main vocal so that we had something that we could process a little bit more normally, mix in, and even send off to effects so that the guitar wasn't in there. And right before we recorded this main double, Harry had to go outside. When he came back in, he didn't shut the door completely. And right at the end of this little phrase, we had a friend show up to give us a bit of ambience for free.
Good, honey, sweet. 'Cause you're good for me.
And it is one of my favorite parts of the track. I'd like to say that It's common practice to have a well-isolated studio that doesn't let in outside sounds. But this is a little bit more common, especially given that there was the famous Billie Eilish song where the frogs made it into the vocal track and they left them in there because they liked the ambience. Same thing. Who knows? Maybe this one will become common practice, finding wildlife for your vocal tracks. So that's going to be all for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, please hit the thumbs up button because it really does help the channel out. And if you want to see more videos like this, then hit the subscribe button and make sure that you go over to Matt's website, WeissAdvice. If you want to learn more stuff about this, then WeissAdvice.com is one of the best resources out there for sure. And remember what we say here at WeissAdvice. We're your musicians. Sound is our instrument. I'll catch you next time.